It had been almost 100 years since the last war on Earth. People had finally learned to live in peace, or at least that's what they believed. There was one leader, a person who didn't belong to any single country but represented all of humanity. Under that leader's guidance, borders had become less important, and the planet had started looking toward the stars. For the first time, people didn't just talk about peace. They actually lived it. Hunger had dropped, technology had advanced, and humanity had reached the point where traveling beyond the solar system wasn't just a dream anymore. That leader had become a symbol of hope, someone who made people believe that humans could rise above their old mistakes. They didn't rule with fear, but with compassion. And somehow that worked. The people trusted them completely. Every child in school knew their name. Every home had their image somewhere. They had become more than a person. They were the heartbeat of Earth. When Earth received its first real contact from intelligent life outside the solar system, the whole planet celebrated. The Galaxy Union, as they called themselves, introduced representatives through bright, shimmering holograms that appeared in Earth's orbit. The aliens didn't look human, but they weren't frightening either. Their voices were calm, their words full of knowledge and curiosity. They offered peace, trade, and the promise of learning from each other. It felt like a new chapter had begun. People imagined a time when humans would walk side by side with other beings from distant worlds. Scientists, explorers, and dreamers were ready to take that leap. And leading them into this new era was the same person who had given them peace on Earth, their global leader. After months of discussions, the leader decided to visit the Galaxy Union in person. It was meant to be a simple diplomatic mission, a first step toward building trust. A large ship, known as the Unity 1, was prepared. It carried not only the leader but also scientists, engineers, diplomats, and a small security team. The whole world watched the launch live. Billions of people stayed awake that night just to see the first step into interstellar friendship. The mood was electric, and the air was filled with hope. For 2 days, the Unity 1 sent updates back to Earth. Everything seemed perfect. The Galaxy Union had welcomed them warmly. Images of distant alien cities and massive starships appeared on every screen. The leader smiled in every broadcast, speaking about peace, cooperation, and a shared future between species. It was the kind of moment that made people forget their troubles, a reminder that humanity could be something greater than just Earth itself. Then, on the 3rd day, everything changed. It started with a broadcast interruption during a live conference between the Unity 1 and Earth's communication hub. A bright flash filled the screen, followed by static. For a few seconds, no one understood what was happening. The technicians tried to reconnect, thinking it was just interference from deep space. Then came the emergency transmission, brief, broken, and terrifying. A single voice screamed something about a sudden explosion near Mars's orbit, and then the transmission cut off completely. Earth waited. People thought it might be an accident, maybe a malfunction in the ship's power systems. But when the hours turned into days with no contact, hope began to fade. The rescue team sent to investigate found only debris scattered across the silent darkness of space. Pieces of metal, parts of the ship's hull, and fragments of what used to be Unity 1. Among the wreckage, they found no survivors. The news spread across the planet faster than any message in history. People cried in the streets, schools closed, cities fell silent. It felt like the entire world had stopped breathing. The leader who had united them, who had made them believe in peace, was gone. But it wasn't just sadness that filled people's hearts. It was confusion and anger. How could something so catastrophic happen during a peaceful mission? And most of all, who was responsible? Soon, a disturbing piece of information surfaced. Satellite recordings showed an unidentified energy signature moments before the explosion. It didn't match any human technology. It came from an external source, something alien. Within hours, the rumor spread that the Galaxy Union had turned on Earth. The peace mission had been a trap, and the leader's death was an act of betrayal. The panic that followed was unlike anything the world had seen before. People who once celebrated the idea of alien friendship now demanded revenge. Riots broke out in some cities. Old national divisions started to rise again. Politicians, scientists, and military officers gathered in emergency councils, trying to understand what had happened. But no one could explain the strange energy reading or why the Galaxy Union suddenly cut all communication after the explosion. Every transmission to their systems went unanswered. Their ships that had once orbited near Earth vanished overnight. The Galaxy Union's ambassadors on Earth, those who had been part of the peace talks, simply disappeared. It was as if the entire alien council had decided to vanish from the map. To many, that silence felt like guilt. And then the mourning turned into fury. People filled the streets holding pictures of the leader, demanding justice. They shouted for unity, not for peace this time, but for vengeance. "We gave them trust," one protester shouted during a live broadcast, "and they killed the one person who made Earth worth living on." Those words echoed through millions of homes. The grief of a planet began turning into something darker, determination to strike back. Inside the global command centers, leaders who once worked on trade and peace began discussing something unthinkable. They started preparing for war. Engineers were called to redesign exploration ships into battle-ready vessels. Factories that once built construction machines began producing weapons and armor. The world's scientists were given full authority to develop technologies that could defend or destroy on a cosmic scale. Still, there were a few who doubted. Some believed that there must be another explanation. The energy readings could have come from a third source. Maybe the Galaxy Union hadn't done it. But those voices were drowned out by anger. The pain of losing someone who had united the planet was too deep. People didn't want logic, they wanted someone to blame. For the first time in centuries, humanity was united again. But not by love or peace this time. They were united by grief and rage. The Earth's flags were lowered, and a new one was raised, the symbol of the Terran coalition, representing all of humanity as one fighting force. It wasn't about countries anymore. It was about species. People began to look at the stars not with wonder, but with cold determination. The dream of interstellar friendship had turned into a mission for justice. Television screens filled with speeches promising that the leader's death would not be in vain. The world's most powerful minds worked day and night, pushing human technology beyond its limits. Artificial intelligence, propulsion systems, and energy weapons advanced faster in months than they had in decades. Humanity was preparing for something it had never faced before: war among the stars. But even as the world prepared for revenge, a quiet sadness lingered. Not everyone believed in the path being taken. Some felt that the leader would never have wanted this. The person who had brought peace would never have supported destruction, even in their own name. Yet in grief, people often forget the lessons of the ones they love. And so, while statues of the leader were built in every capital city, their true message of peace was slowly being replaced with words of vengeance. In the skies above Earth, new warships began to take shape, massive, silver, and shining like blades of light. They were called Guardians, though everyone knew what they truly were: weapons. Humanity had decided that if the galaxy wanted war, they would give it war. No one realized it then, but the moment Earth chose the path of vengeance, a new story had begun. Not one of exploration or peace, but one of fury. And once that fury was unleashed, there would be no turning back. The months after the leader's death were some of the darkest in human history. The world was still spinning, cities were still standing, but inside people's hearts something had broken. The silence from the Galaxy Union made it worse. Every day humans sent messages into deep space calling for answers. Why did you do it? Why betray us? Was peace a lie? But no reply ever came back. At first, people waited patiently, hoping it was some misunderstanding, maybe a communication delay. But as weeks turned into months, that hope disappeared. Governments released one statement after another, saying they were investigating and searching for evidence, yet no one could explain why the Galaxy Union had gone quiet. On Earth, grief slowly turned into suspicion. People started seeing the aliens as monsters. Old news clips showing smiling alien diplomats began to look strange now, like lies. Commentators on world networks called them cowards and traitors. Families who once admired the idea of joining the galaxy now felt disgusted at the thought. Humanity's trust had been shattered, replaced by anger. Protests filled every major city. Some were peaceful, people holding candles and photos of the fallen leader, praying for justice. Others were not. Crowds shouted in rage, demanding that Earth strike back. They said waiting for answers was pointless, that only strength could bring peace now. The silence from the stars made people believe the worst. When someone is hurt and no one explains why, the mind fills in its own stories, and humanity's story was one of betrayal. They believed the Galaxy Union wanted to show Earth its place, to remind humans that they were small and powerless. They believed the explosion wasn't an accident, but a message. Inside the great council halls, leaders debated what to do next. Scientists presented their data again and again. The energy signature doesn't match our weapons, one said. It's alien, but we can't confirm whose. Another scientist spoke up. It could be from the Galaxy Union, or it could be something else. We just don't have enough proof. But their words barely mattered. The decision had already been made in people's hearts. The world couldn't stay silent anymore. It needed to act, to show the galaxy that humans weren't weak. A new alliance was born from that decision, the Terran Coalition. It wasn't made of separate countries, but of all humanity united as one. The coalition's goal was simple: protect Earth and make the Galaxy Union answer for what they had done. Factories began to work day and night. The same factories that once built machines for farming and construction now made war equipment. The same engineers who designed space exploration vehicles were now told to build ships that could fight, not just travel. And yet, not everyone agreed with this new path. There were still people who believed in peace. Some said that revenge would only destroy what the leader had built. They reminded everyone of the leader's last words before leaving Earth. Our strength is not in our weapons, but in our unity. But those words were quickly forgotten. People said peace had failed. They said unity now meant standing together for battle. Media channels ran endless stories about the Galaxy Union, most of them based on rumors. Old footage of alien ships was played again and again, now labeled as evidence of hostility. Fear spread like wildfire. The more people feared, the more they wanted action. In the orbiting cities above Earth, engineers began designing new ships. Massive structures floated in space, surrounded by glowing blue lights and swarms of drones building armor plates, engines, and weapons. Each ship was a symbol of human determination. The first one was called Vigilance, a name chosen by the people themselves through a worldwide vote. They said it represented humanity's watchful eyes, their readiness to never be caught off guard again. The Vigilance was unlike anything Earth had ever built before. It was longer than 5 skyscrapers and could carry thousands of people. It had defense systems that could absorb energy blasts and engines that could reach speeds close to light. But more than its design, it carried something deeper. It carried humanity's anger. Every worker who welded its metal plates, every pilot who trained to fly it, did so with the image of the fallen leader in mind. When the ship was finally completed, people celebrated again, but this time it wasn't with smiles. It was with clenched fists and hard eyes. They called it a symbol of strength. But deep down, everyone knew what it truly was: a weapon built for revenge. Still, even as the world prepared for conflict, there were voices trying to speak reason. Some scholars and diplomats tried reaching out to the stars again, sending messages in hundreds of languages. They said, "If anyone is listening, please respond. We don't want war. We want truth." But space remained silent. The Galaxy Union's planets didn't send a single signal. Not one ship appeared in the outer solar system. It was as if they had erased themselves completely. To most humans, that silence was proof of guilt. They believed the aliens were hiding, scared of Earth's reaction. They thought, they know we're coming for them. And so, preparations for war continued. The Terran Coalition announced a new era of defense. Billions of credits were poured into research. The military grew stronger. Drones patrolled the skies and young people volunteered in record numbers, wanting to defend Earth's honor. It was no longer about who started it. It was about not appearing weak. But behind all the noise, there were still quiet moments of sorrow. Some people still visited the leader's memorial every day. It was built in the center of the capital, a tall glass structure that reflected the sky. Inside, recordings of the leaders' speeches played softly. "We are one world, one family," their voice said. "Let's build bridges, not walls." Many cried listening to those words. Some whispered apologies as if speaking to the leader's spirit. But when they stepped outside, reality hit again. The sound of military drills, the sight of new ships launching into the sky, the endless news about preparing for conflict, and then the unthinkable happened. A deep space probe detected unusual movement beyond Pluto. Several large objects were seen moving slowly, heading toward the outer solar system. They weren't human ships. No one could confirm what they were, but they didn't send any signals or show any friendly signs. Panic returned immediately. The news channels screamed, "They're coming!" The military raised all alert levels. For days, everyone waited, watching the skies. But the objects never came closer. They stayed far away and then vanished from sensors completely. Some said it was just debris. Others said it was a scout fleet from the Galaxy Union, checking if Earth was ready to fight. Whatever it was, it only added more fuel to the fire. By then, the Terran coalition was unstoppable. Every act of silence, every shadow in space, every unexplained signal became another reason to prepare for war. Humanity's patience had run out. In a secret meeting broadcast later as a historical record, one of the top commanders said, "If the Galaxy Union won't speak, we'll make them listen. If they hide, we'll find them. If they destroyed our leader, we'll show them what humanity is capable of." The speech spread everywhere. It became the slogan of the new era. Factories lit up the night sky. Spaceports launched wave after wave of new ships. The human spirit that once dreamed of exploration was now being forged into something harder, something dangerous. People stopped asking why the Galaxy Union attacked. They no longer cared about understanding. They only wanted justice, or at least what they thought justice meant. Children in schools now learned about courage and strength instead of peace and diplomacy. Songs were written about the fallen leader, turning their memory into something close to legend. They were no longer remembered as a person of peace, but as a martyr who had died for humanity's awakening. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a few still wondered, what if this was all a misunderstanding? What if the Galaxy Union didn't do it, but no one dared say it aloud? It sounded almost like betrayal. So humanity marched forward, united under a single belief, that they were fighting for truth, that they were bringing justice to the stars, that their fury was righteous. But deep in the blackness between worlds where human sensors couldn't reach, something else was watching. Something that had seen it all unfold, the peace, the tragedy, and now the rage. It stayed silent, waiting for the right time to show itself. Because the truth about the leader's death wasn't what people believed, and when that truth would finally be revealed, the galaxy would never be the same again. The world had changed completely in just 1 year. The bright cities that once glowed with peace and music now echoed with the sound of construction and engines. Massive factories stood where parks used to be. The air carried the smell of metal and fuel. Humanity was no longer building dreams. It was building war. Everywhere screens showed the same image, the flag of the Terran coalition waving against the stars. It had one symbol at the center, a circle of light surrounded by sharp wings representing Earth rising with strength. The message was simple: we are ready. For many people, joining the Terran program became a matter of pride. Young men and women lined up outside recruitment centers. They wanted to become pilots, engineers, or soldiers. They said they weren't fighting for revenge, but for justice. They wanted to protect the planet, to make sure no one could ever hurt humanity again. Even those who doubted the war couldn't stop it now. The movement was too strong, the pain too deep. The death of the leader had united humanity in a way nothing else could. Some said it was the leader's last gift, that their loss had made the world truly one. High above the earth, floating cities turned into military shipyards. Drones moved non-stop, carrying tons of metal, welding armor, and installing engines. Scientists worked day and night, inventing new technologies that no one had imagined before. They found ways to bend light for faster travel, to use artificial gravity for massive ships, and to create weapons that could fire beams across the void of space. At the center of all this stood one ship, a project that symbolized everything humanity had become. It was called the Vigilance. The Vigilance was unlike anything before it. It wasn't just a ship. It was a floating city. It had entire districts for crew members, towers filled with sensors and a main bridge that looked like a shining glass dome. Inside that dome, officers could see the entire universe spread before them. The ship's armor was thick enough to survive direct hits from energy weapons, and its engines could travel between stars faster than any probe ever had. But what made the Vigilance truly special wasn't its size. It was its heart. Deep inside, in a chamber known as the core hall, rested an artificial intelligence known simply as Eve. It wasn't just a machine. It was built to think like a human, to feel patterns, to understand emotions. The scientists had created it as a guide, a partner, and a protector. It could predict battle strategies, control entire fleets, and even communicate in dozens of alien languages. Many believed it was the key to humanity's victory. When the Vigilance was completed, the entire planet celebrated. Billions watched the launch live as the ship slowly rose from its dock on the lunar shipyard. Its engines glowed a deep blue, and its shadow stretched across the moon's surface. People cried, cheered, and whispered prayers. They didn't see a warship, they saw hope. For them, the Vigilance was more than steel. It was a promise that humanity would never again be victims. Soon after, the Terran coalition announced the formation of the Terran Armada, a fleet of ships built to defend Earth and seek justice for their fallen leader. Hundreds of smaller vessels joined the Vigilance. There were escort cruisers, carriers, and scout ships. Each had a purpose, each built with care. The fleet stretched so far across the sky that from some parts of Earth, you could see the reflection of its engines twinkling like stars. People said the galaxy would finally know humanity's strength. Training centers opened on every continent. Pilots learned how to control ships in zero gravity. Engineers studied alien technology and improved it. Medics were trained to treat both human and unknown injuries. The world's focus was now fully turned outward. Humanity had become a spacefaring civilization, driven not by curiosity but by emotion. And yet, behind all the noise, there were still quiet moments. One young pilot, standing at the edge of the launch deck, looked up at the Vigilance and whispered, "Will this really make things better?" It was a question many asked in silence, but few dared to say out loud. The government said the Galaxy Union had to be stopped before they attacked again, but there had been no attack since that day. No sightings, no messages, nothing. Some believed that the silence meant the aliens were planning something big. Others feared it meant they were hiding in guilt. Either way, no one felt safe anymore. The coalition's leaders gave speeches almost every week. They said the same thing. The time for waiting is over. The time for answers has come. And with each speech, more ships were built, more soldiers trained, and more hearts filled with determination. In the laboratories beneath Earth's surface, scientists worked on something called the pulse engine. It was a new kind of drive that could open temporary windows between stars, allowing fleets to travel light years in minutes. It was dangerous, unstable, and barely tested, but the world's leaders didn't care. They said humanity couldn't afford to wait. The galaxy had to see their power. Finally, after months of preparation, the day came. The Terran Armada gathered near Mars. Thousands of ships floated in formation, glowing like a sea of light. The Vigilance stood at the center, its hull shining like silver fire. Every camera on Earth turned toward it. The commander of the fleet gave a speech that was broadcast to the entire planet. "We were once dreamers," he said, his voice echoing through every device. "We wanted peace, but the galaxy took that from us. They took our leader, they took our hope. Now we take back our destiny. The Terran Armada will not conquer. We will bring justice to the stars," people cheered. Cities lit up with fireworks. Families hugged and cried. It felt like history was happening again, like the birth of a new era, but far away in the quiet corners of space. A few scientists still studied the wreckage of Unity 1, the ship that had carried the leader on that final mission. They found fragments of strange metal and bits of melted circuits. Some pieces didn't match any known alien material. The scientists sent reports to the coalition's headquarters, but no one responded. Their findings were ignored, buried under the noise of celebration. Because at that moment, humanity wasn't looking for truth. They were looking for victory. As the countdown began for the Armada's first launch beyond the solar system, tension filled the air. Everyone held their breath as the engines powered up. The Vigilance led the way, its pulse engine glowing brighter and brighter until a massive blue ring opened before it. A doorway between stars. And then, for the first time in history, humanity stepped beyond its home system not as explorers, but as warriors. When the fleet disappeared into that glowing portal, the people of Earth felt both proud and fearful. Proud because they believed justice was finally on its way. Fearful because deep down they knew, once you start a war in the stars, it might never end. For days, the news kept replaying the images of the fleet leaving. Children pointed at the sky, saying they wanted to be like them. Parents told stories of courage and sacrifice. But somewhere far in the quiet of deep space, the truth about the leader's death still waited, unseen and unsolved. The Vigilance and its fleet would soon face things they couldn't imagine, worlds they had never dreamed of, powers they didn't understand, and choices that would test what it truly meant to be human. Because while humanity prepared for war, the galaxy was watching, and it was waiting. The first jump beyond the solar system was like stepping into another universe. The stars looked brighter, and the space around the fleet seemed endless. For a few minutes there was silence on every channel. The crew members of the Terran Armada stared out of their windows in awe. Humanity had finally crossed the border between the known and the unknown, but this time it wasn't curiosity that guided them. It was anger. The Vigilance led the fleet through a tunnel of blue light created by the pulse engine. When the light faded, they found themselves orbiting a planet that shimmered with silver clouds and glowing rings. It was one of the outer defense worlds of the Galaxy Union. The mission was simple: make contact, demand answers, and if attacked, respond with full force. At first, the world below looked peaceful. Vast oceans, floating cities, and lights that sparkled like jewels. For a moment, some of the officers felt doubt. Maybe the aliens weren't preparing for war at all. Maybe they were just afraid. But the memories of Earth's loss were still too fresh. The commander's voice came over the speakers. "Activate scanners. We're not here to admire the view. We're here for justice." Hundreds of drones were launched from the Vigilance and spread across the sky. They scanned the alien world for signs of weapon systems. At first, everything seemed quiet. Then suddenly, one of the scout ships reported strange readings from the planet's surface. Power surges, defense shields coming online, and energy spikes pointing directly toward the human fleet. Before anyone could react, a flash of light erupted from below. An energy beam shot straight into space, missing one of the smaller Terran ships by only a few hundred meters. It wasn't a direct hit, but it was enough to confirm everyone's fears. "They fired first," someone shouted across the bridge. That one sentence changed everything. Within seconds, the order was given. "Return fire." The Vigilance unleashed its main cannons, and the first interstellar battle in human history began. The silence of deep space turned into chaos. Bright beams of light crossed the darkness like storms. Alien ships rose from the planet's surface, sleek, fast, and strangely elegant. They fought with strange energy weapons that bent light itself, but the Terran fleet was massive and its power unmatched. From Earth, the whole world watched through live transmissions. The images came from cameras attached to drones following the fleet. People saw explosions lighting up the void, ships burning, and trails of blue fire stretching across the stars. To many, it looked like victory. To others, it looked like the beginning of something they couldn't stop. The Vigilance took heavy fire but kept advancing. Its shields glowed as energy blasts hit them again and again. Inside, alarms flashed red, and crew members shouted commands to one another. Despite the chaos, there was no fear, only determination. They believed this was for the leader, for Earth, for every tear shed during that dark day. When the main alien station tried to send a transmission, it was jammed instantly. The commander didn't want to hear excuses. The goal was to make them surrender, not talk. After hours of fighting, the alien world's defense grid finally collapsed. The surface went dark as the last power stations were destroyed. The few remaining enemy ships retreated into the shadows of a nearby moon. The Vigilance hovered over the silent planet, victorious. The commander's voice came again, calm but cold. "The first battle is over. Earth's justice has begun." On Earth, people celebrated. Fireworks lit the skies. News anchors smiled for the first time in months, calling it humanity's dawn. They said the galaxy now knew that Earth was not to be trifled with. The death of the leader had been avenged, or at least that's what they believed. But among the crew of the Vigilance, the victory didn't feel complete. The surface of the alien planet showed no signs of an army. No huge bases, no weapon factories, no soldiers ready for invasion. Many of the cities looked abandoned, like the people had fled long before the Terran armada arrived. Some officers whispered to each other that maybe the aliens weren't preparing for war at all. Maybe they had been scared and had acted in panic when they saw Earth's massive fleet approaching. But no one dared to say it out loud. The commander ordered all communication recordings from the battle to be sealed. "The world doesn't need confusion," he said. "They need to believe we did what was right." So the story spread. Earth had struck back and the enemy had fallen. Humanity stood stronger than ever. In the following weeks, the Armada moved deeper into the Galaxy Union's territory. They attacked outposts, seized control of communication hubs, and captured alien ships. Every victory made the people on Earth cheer louder. But with each battle, something changed inside the humans who fought. The joy of victory slowly turned into exhaustion. The more they fought, the less they understood why. The aliens they encountered weren't warriors. Many surrendered the moment they saw human ships. Some even sent messages in broken languages pleading for peace. One day, a smaller alien vessel approached the Vigilance under a white light, an ancient symbol of surrender. It didn't carry weapons. Its crew sent a single message: "We did not kill your leader. We tried to warn you." When that message reached the commander, he ordered it deleted before anyone else could hear it. "Lies," he said. "They think they can confuse us. We're too far in to turn back now." The truth, however, was harder to bury than he thought. A few technicians had already heard the alien message before it was erased. They talked quietly among themselves, wondering if humanity had been wrong all along. Meanwhile, the Vigilance kept pushing forward. It reached the central communication world of the Galaxy Union, a massive planet covered with glass towers that glowed like stars. The Terran fleet surrounded it, cutting off all escape routes. The commander gave the aliens one final warning: "Surrender and answer for what you did, or we'll take your silence as confession." But no one replied, so the order was given again. The Vigilance fired its main cannon. The towers shattered and the surface of the planet went dark. Back on Earth, people cheered again. The media called it the strike of justice. The commander was hailed as a hero. Statues were planned, songs were written, and children were taught that this was the moment when humanity claimed its place among the stars. Yet, deep in space where the wreckage of the alien worlds floated quietly, the silence felt heavier. Not a single alien fleet came to fight back. There was no great counterattack. It was as if the Galaxy Union had vanished, leaving only broken cities and abandoned stations behind. Some in the fleet began to wonder if they had just destroyed something that wasn't an enemy at all. One night, a low-ranking officer found an old signal buried deep in the communication archives. It was dated just days before the Unity 1 explosion, the mission that had killed Earth's leader. The message wasn't from the Galaxy Union. It was from a smaller, unknown source somewhere near Jupiter. It contained coordinates and fragments of human code. The officer hesitated, unsure what to do. If he told the commander, the message might be erased like all the others. If he stayed silent, he'd be part of the lie. He saved the data secretly onto a small drive, hiding it in his uniform. He didn't know it yet, but that one decision would later change everything. As the Terran Armada prepared to move toward the heart of the Galaxy Union, humanity stood proud and blind to the truth. The stars that had once been symbols of wonder now carried the echo of battle. Earth's dream of peace was gone. What replaced it was something far more dangerous, a belief that fury could bring justice. But far away, beyond the reach of the fleet, a small group of survivors from the Galaxy Union was still alive. They watched from the shadows, broken but not defeated. They knew who had really killed Earth's leader. They knew the truth that humanity was too angry to hear, and they swore that when the time came, the truth would be revealed. But for now, the galaxy remained silent again, not from peace but from fear. The Terran Armada had been moving from one galaxy system to another for almost a year now. Each new victory added another mark of pride on their ships. To the people on Earth, they were heroes. Every broadcast, every news headline celebrated their courage. But deep inside the fleet, things were not the same anymore. The faces of the crew had changed. Their smiles had faded. The excitement of the first mission was gone. What remained was exhaustion and quiet confusion. Everywhere they went, they found ruins instead of resistance. Entire alien cities stood empty, as if the people had left before the humans even arrived. Some planets showed signs of fighting, but not from humans. Someone else had attacked them long before the Terran armada came. The silence was becoming heavier than any battle they had faced. Inside the Vigilance, life felt tense. The commander kept his focus on the mission, but his officers had started whispering. There were rumors of strange messages coming through the communication lines, messages that were quickly deleted before reaching the command deck. No one said it openly, but many believed someone inside was hiding the truth. The young officer who had saved the secret message still carried it with him. Every night he would sit alone in his small cabin and replay the fragments over and over. The recording was short and most of it was damaged. But one line was clear. Do not approach the leader's ship. There's a trap inside. It's not the Union, it's... Then the voice cut off. The coordinates in the message pointed to a location near Jupiter, not deep space. That meant the explosion that killed Earth's leader might not have come from aliens at all. But who would believe that now? After everything humanity had done, after so much anger had been unleashed, could anyone accept that the war had started from a misunderstanding? One evening, the officer finally decided to take the risk. He approached an older engineer he trusted, a man who had served since the beginning of the fleet. I have something to show you, he said quietly, handing him the small data drive. The engineer played the recording, and when he heard the message, he looked up with shock. If this is real, he whispered, then everything we're doing is wrong. They both knew that going to the commander would be dangerous. But they also knew they couldn't keep silent forever. Together they began gathering more clues. They checked old communication logs, scanned damaged satellite data, and even found deleted records from before the war began. The more they found, the clearer the picture became. The attack on Earth's leader had not been alien at all. It was a human-made weapon, designed to look like alien technology. Someone on Earth had wanted the war to happen. The two men sat in silence, staring at the evidence. Why would anyone do this? The officer asked. The engineer sighed. Power, fear, control. Maybe someone believed humanity needed an enemy to unite against. Meanwhile, the Vigilance was preparing for its biggest operation yet, the final strike on the heart of the Galaxy Union. It was a planet said to be filled with billions of alien citizens. The commander wanted to send a message so strong that no species in the universe would ever challenge Earth again. But before the fleet jumped to the next system, the officer decided to act. He managed to send a small encrypted message back to Earth through a private channel. It contained the recording and the coordinates near Jupiter. He didn't know who would receive it or if anyone would believe it, but it was his only chance. Days passed. There was no reply. The officer began to think the message had been lost or blocked. But then something unexpected happened. Late one night, the commander received a transmission directly from Earth. It was marked as top security, eyes only. When he opened it, the message was short and strange. Stop your advance. A discovery has been made. Return to base immediately. The commander stared at the screen for a long time. He didn't understand what was going on, but orders from Earth were never questioned. The next morning, the fleet changed course. Every soldier on board was confused. No one knew why the mission had suddenly been canceled. Back on Earth, the atmosphere had shifted. The secret message sent by the officer had reached someone important, a researcher who once worked with the late leader. The coordinates near Jupiter were investigated, and what they found changed everything. Hidden inside an abandoned space facility, they discovered remains of a human-made drone, covered in alien-style plating. Its internal systems matched the exact energy pattern that destroyed the leader's ship. The truth could no longer be denied. The assassination had been carried out by humans, not aliens. When the news reached the government, chaos followed. The officials who had pushed for war immediately went silent. Some claimed they had been misled. Others tried to hide the evidence. But it was too late. The story had already begun to spread among the people. The commander of the Vigilance received a direct message from Earth's new council. It said the war was built on falsehood. You are to cease all attacks and await further instructions. Prepare to face questioning upon return. The entire bridge went silent when the order was read aloud. The crew looked at one another in disbelief. Everything they had fought for, every life lost, every planet destroyed, it had all been for nothing. The commander's hands trembled slightly as he closed the message. For a moment his voice failed him. Then he looked at his crew and said quietly, "Set course for home." The journey back to Earth felt longer than the war itself. The stars no longer looked beautiful. They looked distant and cold. Many on board couldn't sleep. Some wept quietly in their cabins. Others refused to believe what they'd heard. "It can't be true," they said. "The aliens must be lying." But deep inside they all knew the truth. The young officer who had started it all sat alone in the observation deck, watching the stars pass by. He felt no pride, only a heavy sadness. He had saved the truth, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like guilt. He thought of all the alien lives lost, of all the cities that had been turned to dust because of a lie. When the Vigilance finally reached Earth's orbit, it was not welcomed with cheers or fireworks. The once celebrated heroes returned to a world that no longer knew how to look at them. Crowds gathered in silence, holding signs that said, "We want the truth." The news channels that once called them saviors now questioned every decision made during the war. The commander stood before the world and gave a statement that would be remembered for generations. His voice was heavy but steady. "We believed we were defending Earth. We believed we were fighting for justice. But the truth is we were deceived. And for that I accept responsibility." His words echoed across every screen, every home, every heart. People wept. Some shouted in anger. Others stood in silence, realizing how deeply fear had shaped their choices. Investigations began. The real mastermind behind the false attack was revealed to be a powerful group that had wanted to unite humanity under one rule by creating an external enemy. They believed fear would keep people loyal and obedient, but their plan had gone too far. In the following weeks, protests filled the streets. People demanded peace with the remaining alien worlds. A new council was formed, one that promised transparency and fairness. The war machines were dismantled, and for the first time in years, the sky above Earth felt calm again. The officer who had exposed the truth was quietly honored, but he never asked for recognition. He often visited the memorial built for all who had died, humans and aliens alike. The memorial stood in the center of what used to be the main military base. At its heart was a simple line carved into stone. "Truth is the only weapon that brings peace." Though the galaxy had gone silent after the destruction, small signals of hope began to appear. Some alien survivors started to respond to human messages again. Slowly, cautiously, they opened channels of communication. They didn't speak of revenge, they spoke of rebuilding together. The war had ended, but its lessons remained. Humanity learned that anger could blind even the brightest minds, that unity built on lies always collapses, and that peace could only grow from honesty. The Vigilance was retired and placed in orbit as a reminder, a silent monument among the stars. When people looked up at it, they didn't see a symbol of power anymore. They saw the cost of misunderstanding, the price of fury. And somewhere out there in the quiet corners of space, the stars shone softly again, not as enemies, but as the home humanity had yet to truly know. The war was over, but the silence that followed was heavy. The stars no longer looked like places to conquer. They looked like reminders of everything humanity had lost. Cities on Earth had returned to their usual rhythm, but something had changed forever. People no longer looked up at the night sky with excitement. They looked with guilt, wondering what was really out there and if forgiveness was even possible. The Terran armada had been dissolved. Most of the ships were decommissioned, stripped of weapons and turned into research vessels. The Vigilance, once the pride of Earth, now floated in orbit as a quiet monument to a painful chapter of history. Every week visitors came aboard, walking through its empty corridors, reading about the choices that had brought humanity to the edge of destruction. The officer who had revealed the truth kept a low profile. He avoided interviews and refused rewards. People called him the one who woke the world, but he didn't see himself that way. To him, it wasn't heroism. It was simply the right thing to do. Still, he carried the memories of war with him. The faces of fallen crew members, the burning alien cities, the empty skies, they haunted his dreams. Months turned into years. Slowly, things began to change. A new council had been formed on Earth, a mix of scientists, diplomats, and ordinary citizens. Their main goal was simple: rebuild trust both among humans and with the other races in the galaxy. But reaching out wasn't easy. For years, Earth's broadcasts had been filled with threats and anger. Many alien worlds had gone completely silent, hiding their presence, afraid of what humans might do again. So the Council decided to send one small ship. Not a warship, not a fleet, just a small vessel called Harmony. It carried no weapons, only communication tools and a message. We are sorry. We seek peace. When Harmony left Earth, people watched from every screen. Some doubted it would ever return. Others prayed it would find someone out there willing to listen. The journey took months. The crew consisted of only 7 people, including the officer who had once served aboard the Vigilance. He had agreed to join, believing he owed it to those they had wronged. During the journey, he often sat in the observation bay, staring into the endless void. The stars looked different now, softer, gentler. He whispered to himself, "We're not here to fight anymore." For a long time, there was no response to their signals. Every attempt to contact alien frequencies went unanswered. It was like calling into an empty universe. But one night, while everyone else was asleep, a faint signal appeared on their monitors. It wasn't in any known language, but it carried a rhythm, almost like music. They followed the signal, and it led them to a quiet planet covered in silver forests and glowing rivers. The sensors showed signs of life, but nothing aggressive. Carefully, Harmony landed near what looked like the ruins of a city. When the crew stepped outside, they saw tall structures made of crystal and metal, broken and silent. The air was breathable, and the ground shimmered with faint energy. It was clear this planet had once been part of the Galaxy Union before the war. Then they saw them, the first living aliens humanity had met since the fighting ended. They were smaller than humans, their skin smooth and pale like light itself. They didn't approach aggressively. Instead, they watched quietly from a distance, their eyes filled with caution but also curiosity. The officer raised his hand slowly, showing he carried no weapon. He spoke softly through the translator. "We came to talk. We are not your enemies. We came to say we are sorry." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then one of the aliens stepped forward and touched the translator device. The machine flickered and a voice came through, slow and unsure. "You destroyed our worlds. Why now do you come with peace?" The officer's voice shook slightly as he replied, "Because we were wrong. We were lied to. We lost our leader and we blamed you. We let anger blind us. We can't change what happened, but we want to make it right." The alien looked at him for a long time. Then in a calm tone it said, "Truth can heal, but truth takes time." That day became the first real step toward healing. The crew of Harmony stayed on the planet for several weeks. They helped repair broken technology, shared medical supplies, and recorded stories from the survivors. The aliens told them about how their people had once tried to warn Earth before the explosion, but their message was intercepted and twisted. They had never wanted war. Each conversation was painful but honest. Both sides cried. Both shared their grief. And somewhere between the tears, something new began to grow. Understanding. When Harmony finally returned to Earth, it didn't bring treasures or new weapons. It brought hope. The recordings of their conversations were broadcast worldwide. People listened to the alien voices, soft, tired, but kind, and for the first time they saw them not as enemies, but as beings who had suffered just as much. The world changed again. Schools began teaching not just Earth's history, but the shared history of the galaxy. The Council started sending more peaceful missions, not to dominate, but to learn. Slowly, other alien worlds began responding too. Some sent small signals of trust. Others sent invitations. The wall of silence that once surrounded Earth was finally breaking. Years later, a grand meeting took place in orbit around Earth, a gathering of humans and alien representatives. There was no talk of weapons, no speeches of power, only words of cooperation. Together they signed what became known as the Celestial Accord, a promise that no race would ever again start a war without first seeking the truth. At the ceremony, the officer stood quietly in the background. He didn't want attention, but the alien delegate, the same one from the Silver Forest planet, found him in the crowd. "You started this path," the alien said. "Not with war, but with truth." He smiled humbly and replied, Maybe truth was always stronger than fury. As the years went by, new generations were born, children who never knew the fear of war, who grew up seeing humans and aliens working side by side. Together they built space stations, shared knowledge, and explored new worlds. The universe that had once been divided by hatred was slowly becoming a shared home. The Vigilance, still floating in orbit, was turned into a museum of peace. Visitors from every world came to see it. Inside, a plaque hung on its command bridge with simple words carved into metal. May the stars never again witness the fire of anger, but only the light of understanding. Every year, on the anniversary of the war's end, people gathered beneath the ship to light lanterns that drifted upward, glowing softly like stars. It became a tradition, not of mourning but of remembrance. The officer, now much older, would sometimes visit the site and watch the lanterns rise. He would think about how far humanity had come, from a world blinded by fury to one that finally learned compassion. He would whisper to himself, "This is what our leader wanted all along. Unity, not war." And sometimes, when he looked up at the night sky, he could almost imagine hearing the faint, musical signals of distant worlds no longer filled with fear, but with friendship. Humanity had learned the hardest lesson of all, that real strength wasn't in power or ships or weapons. It was in the courage to admit mistakes, to ask for forgiveness, and to rebuild what was broken. The galaxy was no longer a place of enemies. It was a place of shared dreams. And somewhere among the stars, the memory of Earth's fallen leader lived on, not as a symbol of anger, but as a reminder that even after the darkest night, light can still return, because in the end fury fades, but truth lasts forever.